Hi and welcome back to A Gardening Midwife and Lunar Gardening for the month of April. There is so much to look forward to in the month of April. The season is really turning now. In April, it's the month where we can almost see things changing day on day in terms of what is changing and happening in our beautiful gardens. Now, there's no need to panic if you haven't managed to do some of the tasks that you was hoping to do in March. There is still so much time to do this. If anything, April is a time of a little bit of caution because we can be led to feeling that actually things are a lot warmer and a lot better than what they actually are. We can still have those April frosts and the weather still can change on us. That means a lot of those tender plants still aren't quite ready for going outside. But if you're interested in growing your own food or growing your own garden, patio gardening, balcony gardening, like where I am now, then this video is going to show you how to do that using the moon cycle and using that lovely drawing up energy that controls the rise and fall of the tides to garden successfully in the month of April. So April is a time of great vibrancy. We can really start to see those warmer days coming, but starting off with that lovely frosty, chilly morning. So it's a reminder that whilst we might already have started or can still continue to sow some of our lovely hardy annuals, we can also start to get some of those half hardy annuals started indoors or in a more sheltered area, just to slowly get them ready to then be hardened off into the month of May. April's also a great time for sowing things like our potatoes, but also enjoying the wonderful delights of the last few months where we might have planted or sown some different bulbs that are now coming into lovely fruition. Things like tulips only last for a small amount of the year, but are absolutely glorious to enjoy whilst they're here with us. Whilst the ground is warming, it will also be warming to things like slugs and snails that can also start to affect some of those tender little shoots that might be coming through from the things that you are trying to sow or grow. So follow along in this video and let's do a bit of a dive into what the moon is telling us to grow for the month of April. Now, we might start the month with April Fool's Day, but we also start it, as we often do, with our new moon going into that first quarter. Now, this first new moon actually starts on the 29th of March, but runs us through until the 4th of April. And this waxing of the moon is associated with that increased vitality at the beginning of the month to get us ready for growing and sowing. Now, as I mentioned last month, although this is starting to give a bit of a drawing up energy and it is a good time to sow and grow our plants, there is a better time which is coming just after that 4th of April, which is even better for this and has a lot stronger energy for growing upwards and outwards. However, this phrase that starts us off just until the 4th of April is also a perfect time to maybe start to look after some of our house plants as well. So as most of our houseplants are plants that do develop above the ground and above the soil, this first period in April is the perfect time for us to start looking at potting them on and giving that little bit more room to develop for the rest of the year, but also a bit of a revitalise in terms of their compost. It's really important to remember that compost is what helps to feed our plants. It has a lot of nutrients in there to give them a little bit more love and life back. However, with the plants using that compost and that nutrients, they do sometimes need a refresh. This phase during the waxing of the moon is a great time to take restock of what you've got growing indoors and to assess whether they need a change of compost. One of the telltale signs is whether the compost is starting to almost shrink back from the side of the plant, or whether you can start to see some of the roots at the top just starting to poke through that compost. Your plants most likely definitely need a repot as well if you can hold the pot up and start to see the roots coming through the bottom. Now, whilst the plants will want a bit more room and they will want some fresh compost, we don't want to suddenly jump up and double the size of the pot. Normally, just increasing it by about an inch or so, about 2 centimetres either side, will give the plants lots of room and lots of nutrients to keep going. When we're repotting, it's also a great time for us to assess our plants. So instead of taking them straight out of that old pot and into the new pot without touching their root system, if we hold the plant gently and just give them a bit of a rustle around their roots, let some of that old compost to come on out, it will allow them to get some more of that new compost and new nutrients really right up into their root system. Now, that's giving nutrients to our houseplants, but it's also a great time to start to really mulch and feed some of our other plants that might be in our gardens. Things like our roses or other perennials would really enjoy getting a really good mulch at this time of year, or getting a really nice high nutritious feed. One of the other things that you'll be seeing at this time of year is the forced rhubarb. Now, if you've been forcing your rhubarb, now is the time to sadly start to stop, taking the lid off of your forced rhubarb and just allowing it to get that sunlight to it, so that it can continue to give back into the soil and produce a little bit more growth. Our next phase is coming into the first quarter to the full moon, and this is when we get that really good drawing up energy that is perfect for sowing seeds. So from the 5th to the 12th of April will be my favourite time in April, where I get to sow. Now, I love sowing from seed. I find it so rewarding, but also because I love to grow lots of different unusual varieties of edibles and ornamentals that I might not be able to find in my local garden centres as an established plant. And April is the time when especially things like courgettes and squashes are great to get sowing and growing. So from the 5th to the 12th is the perfect time to be starting to think about squashes, our courgettes, our radishes, our cucumbers can be started off indoors. Runner beans, cabbages, our brassicas are all at a perfect time to get sown. Now, a great way to companion plant is also to grow some herbs in between some of your edibles. And again, April and the 5th to the 12th is a great time to get sowing some of those herbs. You can buy herbs in the pots in the supermarkets. However, you'll often find that there's a lot of very tiny little plants really compacted together. And so they'll often really struggle to thrive into those pots. Now, you can simply just break those pots apart, divide them into smaller plants and pot them up, which can be a really cost-effective way of getting 5 or 6 different lots of basil plants, for example. However, the other way that you can do it is to buy yourself some seeds. They're normally fairly cheap from our local garden centres, and just lightly sprinkle them onto some compost to grow your own. The amount of seeds that you will get in a packet in the garden centres will allow you to produce years and years worth of all of your favourite herbs. The only thing to bear in mind, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, is that we might still get a few of those really late April frosts. So things like sowing our cucumbers, our squashes, our courgettes, and some of those herbs, they will not be resistant to frost. So if you have started them outside, it's really advisable to have a good cloche over them or some fleece. If not, to start them off indoors on a sunny windowsill, ready to harden off and get outside next month in May. So that first phase is all about that drawing up energy. So it's going to be all of our plants that are going to develop above the soil. The next phase, from the full moon to the last quarter, is going to be from about the 13th to the 20th of April. And that's going to give us the drawing down energy. So this is all the things that are going to produce below the ground level that we want to be able to get sowing and growing. Now, if you're like me, you'd have already got your first early potatoes out into the ground in March. But the 13th to the 20th of April is the perfect time to get your second earlies and even your main crops into the ground. Now, there's so many different types of potatoes out there. We have our salad, our first early, second early, and main crop, all of which have got loads of different varieties within them as well. So you can really grow potatoes all year long if you want to do so. I would really recommend looking at a potato that, first of all, it's going to taste good, but also having a look at ones that are disease resistant as well. There's nothing more frustrating than digging up your potatoes and finding that they've got some rust or scab onto the potato, which makes them not store as well and look a little bit unsightly. This year, I'm going to be going in with Rocket as my first early, absolutely delicious new potato. For my second earlies, we are going to be going with Charlotte. Can't go wrong with them, really popular variety and absolutely delicious flavour. And then my main crop are going to be these fabulous Java. This is a new variety out, but looks absolutely beautiful. Now, whilst I love growing things like my potatoes, I also love to grow flowers. And now is the perfect time from the 13th to the 20th of April to think about growing some of those later bulbs. So bulbs don't just have to be sown in late autumn to winter for spring flowering bulbs. You can also sow them in April to flower a little bit later in the summer. Some of these will be things like your gladiolis and your lilies, which can give you an absolutely beautiful floral display. Whether you're growing at an allotment or on a vegetable patch, they'll really help the pollinators to come to your plot, which will help with your edibles. If not, in your garden or in pots on balconies, you can still grow some absolutely beautiful blooms, some of which are so highly scented. They're really beautiful to be around. And then lastly, in April, we come to that last quarter into the new moon. This will be happening from around the 21st of April to the 27th. And this, as always, is our dormant period. So that period of rest and recuperation. We'll find that sap levels in our trees and in our kind of woody shrubs will be a little bit lower, making them perfect for pruning. This dormant period is also, as I always say, a great time for us to recoup and just realign with what we want to do in our gardens this year. What I love to do in April, and I'm really looking forward to, is starting to plan a little bit more what's going to be sown and grown in different parts of my allotment, but also to start to re-establish some of my plant supports so that I can grow and sow around them. So things like for my runner beans and for my sweet peas, I will be starting to build my bamboo arches or my old recycled pallet arches now to get ready for those plants to grow and thrive up them and hopefully produce some really wonderful harvests. So while you might start to see those wonderful changes in April in your garden, don't forget to get out into nature. This is a great time to be mindful and taking in what we can see is growing and developing around us. If you're here in the UK, we are so lucky to have over half of the world's bluebells here with us. So we'll normally start to see some of those first bluebells around the middle of the month, and they really do just give such joy to anyone that's going to be around them to enjoy them. They seem to just pop up overnight and can be found covering our woodland floors and giving this beautiful floor and lawn of just a beautiful purple violet. And we can't do a video on April without talking about Easter. So Easter falls within the month of April and is again another time to get you, your family and loved ones into the garden. Whether that's doing Easter egg hunts, going to look for the first signs of the bluebells, or just taking a moment to see the wonderful changes in the season that we have around us. The 22nd of April will also see the 55th year of Earth Day. Now, Earth Day is a worldwide event where we look at climate change and the impact on the Earth currently. It's a great time for us to reflect on our own behaviours, thinking on what we can change to support the environment around us and this wonderful Earth that we live in. And you either love it or hate it, but the day after, on the 23rd of April, is Asparagus Day. So this is traditionally the day the asparagus season officially kicks off for 2025. Now, I love asparagus. I unfortunately don't have it at my allotment, but for those of you that do, it is just an absolute wonder to be able to go down and collect those wonderful little sprigs shooting through the soil. If you're like me and you don't have your own though, do not panic. You'll normally find that our local farm shops and farmers markets and even our supermarkets will start to become absolutely full of local English and British grown asparagus. If you are a lover like me, do make sure that you make the most of this, as the asparagus season is really short, literally from the middle of April only until the end of June, with the last traditional day of cutting asparagus being on the summer solstice. I hope that you've enjoyed this other video of Lunar Gardening with a gardening midwife. If you have enjoyed it, please do click subscribe to help me to continue to create these videos for you. If you do have any comments, please do drop them below, and I do endeavour to always respond to any comments that do come onto the YouTube page. A very happy Easter to all those that celebrate. I hope you have a wonderful April, and let me know how you get on with growing by the lunar calendar.